Greetings from Pumpkin Town Primitives. This is David Gillespie, and I just want to share with you a very special cemetery. We're on location in Phipps Street Burying Ground, Charlestown, Massachusetts. Stay tuned. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Gillespie, and I carve gravestones completely by hand with chisel and mallet only. I draw each letter by hand, carve each letter by hand, in the same manner that it was carved in the colonial period. I have also written a book which has been available now for some 12 years, and if you'd like a copy of it, I'll have a link for it in the description below. It is chiefly on 18th century gravestones, so please check it out. So look, Phipps Street would continue right on through here, and they would take their horse and carriages right up through there to do their burying, or right around to the left or to the right. One of the main reasons why we're here is because this is probably, if not the largest collection, one of the largest collection of 17th century gravestones in America. This is just one example of one from 1673. So we hope to show you some gravestones that are of note, chiefly from the 17th century, or that is the 1600s. It's the most interesting cemetery I've ever seen, where the graves are not exactly facing east. They're just kind of in every direction. Imagine that space was a commodity. So we'll try to go through these stones in the cemetery in chronological order as best as we can. Here we go. The stonecutter of Boston may well have been the first major stonecutter in the Boston area. And here at this example of his work is easy to spot. Easy because the one in his dates look like what's called a candle by my friend David Malloy of our New England Facebook group. The bottom left of this one looks like a scroll. As you can see, it extends farther to the left than it does to the right. And also the top of the one looks like a light or like a star. The sixes later on in his work curve back around at the top, but they don't quite come back to touch the top of the body of the letter. So this type of six also is very indicative of the stonecutter of Boston's work. Notice here on another example of his work that the skull, the cranium at the top of his above his eye sockets, so much larger space, and there again he has the curvilinear eyebrow and the pointed shaped wings we see from time to time. Here's another example of the not so pointy wings, but you can still see the curvilinear eyebrow, and we see Fugit Ora and Memento Mori and even Tempus Fugit in some of his stones, which is Latin. Fugit Ora means time flies. Favorite stones of all time. I saw this back when I was much younger. Here lies the body of Faithful Rose, R-O-W-S-E, age 75 years, died May 18th, 1664. So she was born in the 1580s, y'all. Look at that smooth top. It's just a beautiful little double stone. It's been here for 360 years this year. And look, because it's in slate, it's still crisp and sharp. Almost zero weathering in 360 years. That's why I carve slate. Beautiful. Hallelujah. Small one. Deborah Foster, age 7 weeks, died in the year 1668. And look at there, the letters are just as sharp as the day the guy carved them in 1668. It's not a perfect stone, as you can see. It has a little warp to it, but it has lasted for 300 and some odd years, almost 50. And then right beside of it is one from 1678, Henry Garish. And notice they're still all uncials, capitals, with just a period in between the letters, which is really, really neat and really old. And look at July, I-V-L-Y, July, 4th of July, 1678. In 1678, the 4th of July was insignificant, was it not? I want to pause and show you, this is what I'm seeing with my eyes, and this is what you would look at unless you use the mirror trick. So there's Renee with her mirror, all right? Now when she throws the light across it, take it away, put it back. All that is with the mirror. I don't have to touch the stone to get that effect. And if you like that, go to my video on the mirror trick. I'll place it in the link in the description below. Here lies the body of William Brakenbury, age 66 years, died in the 6th month of 1668. People, that's old. This stone here is about 16 inches long, about 11 inches out of the ground, and maybe 2.5 to 3 inches thick. And that is into the decade of the 1660s. And you can still see the abrasive marks that he used to sand it. Found a super awesome one. Sarah Long with this heart carved into the face here. My guess is this is Stonecutter of Boston, just from the look of him. But that heart is very interesting. I don't see that very often, but it's 1674. And as you can see, very deep, incise work. I'm sure there's some ligatures along the way here. Yeah, there's the THE for thee. But notice that stylized one in 1674. And these beautiful ornaments up here, especially that. You see that a lot here. But just notice how well this piece of slate has weathered, and chiefly, it's a 5-inch thick chunk. Kind of feel like I'm standing beside a celebrity here. Beautiful stone, 1674. So here's another Stonecutter of Boston, I presume. And we see the Fugit aura, time flies up top there. Here lies buried the bodies of George and Mary Fowle. George Fowle, who died in 1682. Mary Fowle, who died in 1676. And notice the stylistic attributes of the 1, especially in 16. And the 6s are very stylized also, very beautiful. So, and notice this stone is very thick. 5 inches maybe. But it's short. Another example from the 1680s. Stonecutter of Boston. It's straight into the sun on this one, so the light isn't perfect, but you can see it's a triple stone from the Stonecutter of Boston, 1676, 80, and 77. It's obviously the Stonecutter of Boston here. And so at the top it has, here lies the children of John and Martha Cutler. And then it has their individual names. Isn't that precious? A 1670s and 80s triple stone, green slate, Stonecutter of Boston. Stonecutter of Boston, 1678. Memento Mori and Fugit aura. How about that? Another Stonecutter of Boston. Age 3 years, deceased February. Now what is that? Do y'all think that's a 2? Or a 0, but notice it's the with 2 carats. And then 16, very beautiful, 1670, and there's that character again. Is that a 2 or a 0? Let me know what you think in the description below. Beautiful Stonecutter of Boston. Very special Stonecutter of Boston here. Carved this one in 1680. You can tell it's Stonecutter of Boston by the top shape of those wings that are kind of pointy. He probably influenced and trained the Mumfords and maybe even Lamson. Here lies the body of Phineas Pratt, aged about 90 years, deceased April the 19th, 1680, and was one of the first English inhabitants of the Massachusetts colony. So if he died in 1680 and was 90, then boys and girls, that means he was born in 1590. This man here was born in 1590 and died in Boston. Wow. Stonecutter of Boston, the body of James Carey, who died 81 years in 1681. So he may have been born in 1599. But you'll notice no sign of weathering, and even the abrasive marks when he was sanding it down. I just had to be videotaped with it. Wow, wow, wow. Isn't it beautiful? 1682, another stonecutter of Boston. Look at that, just beautiful. Got perfect light on it right now, provided by the Lord. Jonathan Call, and a ligature, September, right there, 1682. Just another one from the 1680s, a really simple one though, and to me, one of the most interesting ones. I like these simple ones with the tri-arch. 1683. Here's one up on top of the hill. The body of Catherine, the wife of Captain Thomas Graves, I think that says. But anyway, she died in 1681. But I think this is an example of the stonecutter of Boston. So I just want you to see how he cut everything. Little incised crossbones here. A ligature with the THE, all sharing common stem. Those letters from the 1680s are still very crisp and very readable. There's another ligature, Catherine, sharing 3. The stonecutter of Boston is very well known, one that we study quite a bit. This slate is kind of a grayish green color. And there's your hourglass over in the corner. Thomas Welch was also an early stonecutter and apprenticed with the stonecutter of Boston. Here's an example of his work. He apprenticed with the stonecutter of Boston back to the year 1670 at the age of 17. Notice how big and thick and deep his letters are. I don't know who carved this one, but it's 1680. Good, thick, bold letters. The J is the I. 1678 and 1680. No sign of weathering. Right next door to it. Don't know the year. But it's pretty cool. One from the 1670s, 1678. Samuel Carter. 1678. Just across this cemetery is this actual carver's gravestone, Thomas Welch, carved by Joseph Lamson. And interestingly enough, Joseph Lamson ended up marrying Thomas Welch's widow. Here's a perfect example from the 1680s. Joseph Green, son of Jacob and Mary Green, aged 16 years, 1684. You see there's 1684. Those letters aren't weathered one little bit. You can even see the sanding marks when he would have abraded the surface of that to smooth it. From the 1680s, folks. That's why I carve slate. Wow. Notice that this stone is about 11 inches long, about 2.5 inches thick, and maybe 10 inches out of the ground. Maybe 11 if we're liberal with it. It's a sweeping view here of this hill. 1691. Another Rand, R-A-N-D. Local wildlife here. Little bunny. Could be a descendant of those bunnies here in the 1690s. Just noticed another bunny rabbit right over here. They're probably related. Show you the marbles here next to these. These marbles, I don't know what year they're from because they're faded away. They're probably from the 1850s or later. But next to it is a slate from 1693. This is why I carve slate. This is why I don't carve marble. That's why I carve slate. That's why I don't carve marble. 1693. So here's a 1698 example, which very possibly could be the work of Joseph Lamson. 1698-99 because of the date in the old calendar. Hey, buddy. Top of the hill is this modern marker, but It's for the founder of Harvard University, who was buried here in 1638 somewhere, John Harvard. So out of our time period, but still interesting. It's a very endearing stone. It's very small. I just want you to look how big it is according to my hand. So we're talking maybe 8 inches wide, maybe 11 inches tall, and maybe 4 inches thick. Anna Frothingham, age 67 years, died the 28th of July, 1674. So that is a less expensive stone, but it has held up just as well as these fancy ones here. But look at that, isn't that beautiful? And the A has a nice stylized center portion there. Love it. There's another one from 1682. Just chunky and short, or chunky and tall, this one. One from the 1670s out of red stone, probably a sandstone. I don't think it's red slate, but it's a doctor from 1676. This 1678 carved stone could be an early example of a Joseph Lamson. At first glance, when I saw this stone, I assumed that it must be the work of William Mumford. But my friend David Malloy on our New England Facebook group suggested that it was Joseph Lamson, and after further inspection, I think he's right. And I think the detail that gives it away for me is this curvilinear eyebrow above his eye sockets, and the targets up at the top, the circles, and then these effects that you see here on the this is 1683, but the border, as you see these fronds, these scrolls, they look just like the one that we'll see here in just a minute from the year later, 1684. So this is why I carve slate. Look at those letters, 1683. There's the palm fronds, or the little rococo work on the scrolls on the sides there. It looks very similar to the one that we'll see here in a minute. Of course, there's a ligature, H-E-R. This one is half out of the ground, but it's a great example to show, even though I don't have the perfect light for it. This one is from 1684, okay? But I want you to notice, it's probably a Lamson because he has the little imps of death, as they call it here. But notice that this is the intended ground line here, so everything below it was supposed to be hidden. And so because it's exposed, we see this is how the stone would have been finished out for the finished work, but this is how it would have looked rough. But down here below the ground line is a little practice of his divider from the 1680s. See the point right there? He would have put the point there and turned an arc. So that is a little practice from the 1680s that was not intended to be seen. As you can see, it has a ligature, the. Notice that the letters, again, are very wide, but not very deep. And they're not perfect. These letters from the 1600s aren't perfect, but they have a nice organic balance, which is what I think we need to take note of. 1684, the stone of Hannah Hayman. Another Lamson. This one happens to be from 1694. It's a pretty modeled piece of stone. There's a lot of movement in it that you can see here, but just notice the typical Lamson style skull with wings and the imps of death, as they're called. Memento mori, remember death. Fugit ora, time flies. And we've got these little caricatures up here, but a beautiful piece of slate. And I want you to notice the scribe lines are still present from 1694. So that took literally seconds to scratch a scribe line with that chisel. Still showing up 330 years later. So do you think slate lasts? You better believe it. And there's proof. We're making an exception to our 17th century rule. This is the gravestone of none other than the Joseph Lamson the carver who carved many of the stones in this cemetery. This was probably carved by one of his two sons that were carvers. But notice what it says here at the bottom. It says, "Here lies buried the body of Mr. Joseph Lamson, who deceased August the 27th, 1722, in the 64th year of his age." So this is the Joseph Lamson. It's very rare that you see a gravestone for a gravestone carver. But in this case, his children were carvers, and all of his family are buried right here on this row and this row. All these are Lamsons. What about that? Here is the stone again we were talking about earlier. Thomas Welch is actually a gravestone carver buried over in the Lamson section of the cemetery near all the Lamson family. There's this when I get home, but I'm pretty sure this is the body of Nathaniel Lamson, who was Joseph's son, who also was a carver, and he dies in 1755 at the age of 62. So this is yet another gravestone of a gravestone carver, and his father Joseph is buried right there. There's the son Nathaniel, and then somewhere on this row I saw Caleb. We'll get to Caleb in a minute, but this is Nathaniel right here, the son of Joseph. Here is the gravestone of Caleb Lamson, the last of the major Lamson stonecutters, who died in 1760 and thus ended an era of some of the best gravestone carving in Boston. Well, we want to thank you for coming along with us in this abbreviated tour. For every 1,600 stone we filmed, there were probably 5 or 10 more that we could have filmed, but we tried to get the best ones and the easiest ones. So as I sit here in front of another one, just know how thankful we are that you want to come along with us on this journey, and we hope that you enjoyed seeing, maybe for the first time on YouTube, a good quality look at some of these stones, the earliest stones here in Phipps Street Burying Ground. And if you like this type of content, give us a thumbs up and subscribe and share this with your friends. And we hope to do further studies in this cemetery, all in the will of the Lord. Thank you very much.